So we're looking at a 3-4 and then a 2-5. We're doing okay, I guess, by my standards. Not as well as I did at NashCon, but we'll see if I ever do those vids. I really like this list. The Panzerfaust trap teams are a lot of fun, even if they don't really do much. And our opponent this time is a long-time rival. We meet again. In this mission, free-for-all, we put all our stuff down and there are no reserves. There's nothing fancy. It's just a rack 'em, stack 'em, see who kills who faster kind of thing. You know, pretty typical. But in this one, I applied a little bit of cleverness, a little bit of deception, as you might want to say. The sneaky, sneaky Germans. As I take a look at my list and I prioritize all the things that aren't going to move much or their position's kind of irrelevant in such a way that I'm going to try for a denied flank. This is a pretty classic miniature wargaming maneuver where I end up putting everything that I can in one section of the board and prevent him from being able to apply an equivalent amount of force against it. I start off by putting the mortars out there in the front, concealed in the wheat. Again, that's pretty safe. He puts out all his infantry into the buildings over there on the side. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. He's kind of playing his hand though, because that's his force. I know what I'm going to be opposing. So I end up putting the 15-centimeter guns into the wheat field. Again, they're not moving much. We know what's going to happen with them. He responds by putting his artillery in the center too. Yeah, okay. We also put in the anti-aircraft guns, interspersing them very carefully between all of them so that there's an absolute minimum of overlap whenever he gets any of his nasty air support in. But I have so many guns. Just so many. So much stack. It's great. I love the 2-centimeter. Now he puts in more infantry on the southern end of the board to defend the artillery. That's fair enough. That's a pretty obvious move. And now my hand should start showing because I can see where he's put his stuff and I start putting infantry out in the open on the other side of the board. Granted, there's a hill protecting them. And then as he's all in, because all he had left to put down was some 2-pounder or 5-pounder guns, the 57 millimeters, I respond by putting the Tiger II and all the Panzer IIIs and all my mobile assets to protect the infantry as they're going to go through the opening. And I win initiative. Can you imagine that? I got the first turn, even though I was the last person to deploy. That is a stunning upset. I begin moving the tanks forward. I am very careful not to move the Tiger II. If at all possible, only move it with Stormtrooper. And since he got Schnell, that's going to work out really well for him. I move the Panzer IIIs forward. We're going to hose down anything out in the open and the infantry and just about everything else. And what's slightly out of shot is all the chaffies that are out there that are just waiting to get shot. The German death beam on the Tiger more than eviscerates 2 tanks, and I stormtrooper him forward, as well as all the infantry as they're moving in with all their attachments, the CIC, the 2IC, the whole work, up there through the woods. We're going to try to protect them as much as they can. He, of course, thinks the Tiger is going to be his worst enemy, and in a lot of ways it is. He begins deploying the aircraft against it, but it's within the bubble of the anti-aircraft guns. As a matter of fact, 2 of them. And it's not going to survive. Now, he has 2 batteries of artillery, and he starts putting all the artillery that he can up against the Panzer IIIs and the Tiger, trying to do everything they can to bail them. He manages to bail just one of them by luck alone. He begins moving the infantry on the southern end of the board towards my Panzer Grenadiers, the vets that have gone to ground. They've got an attached heavy machine gun down there. It's going to end up working out really well for him. Chaffies smoke the King Tiger. Wise move. You want to keep me moving with a King Tiger. You don't want me to just, stormtrooper my way across the board, because that death beam is going to just keep lighting up the tanks. And not that it's really necessary. The Panzer IIIs will kill him just as much. He ends up bailing one of the Panzer IIIs, as I mentioned before, with artillery. But the Chaffies managed to not really do anything terribly effective. In return, the Panzer IIIs keep moving forward, light up the rest of the Chaffies, and the King Tiger moves forward and kills the remaining one. Oh, it's so great, so great. Infantry continue their assault. We're going to continue this denied flank, and we're going to sweep up on the northern side of the board, go into the buildings, let the Tiger and the Panzers just kind of assist them with their machine guns. And then, as we assault through there, we're going to take on the objective on the southern, the right side of the board. That should be painfully obvious at this point. Turns out, though, despite my inattentionness, 2 bazooka teams and a rifle stand are sitting in the building right next to the King Tiger. He manages to move some infantry around, prepare for an assault from cover, or at least it wouldn't be from cover specifically. I get 3 machine gun shots at it. It doesn't put him down. The King Tiger was just trying to hide from the observer from the U.S. artillery battery, and manages to take it in an assault. The infantry move up past their motivation, swing, don't do any damage. The King Tiger decides it's not going to have any of this, swings back, and they fail their motivation and push out of the building. I'm not going to chase after it. I think I pressed my luck enough trying to go into a building with a King Tiger. I just thought it would be cool, you know. Nonetheless, the 15-centimeter artillery is counter-battering the U.S. artillery, and they're wrecking their stuff. It's pretty impressive. U.S. air support, however, is not going to have anything to do with it, as he targets the P-47 into the one juicy section of that entire map, which happens to have two stands right next to each other. You can potentially pin 2 units next to each other. But I specifically put it in the very center of the artillery net, the anti-aircraft nest. And again, I think when I go to roll, it's some like 20 or 25 odd dice. Amazingly, though, I only get 2 successful firepowers to put down the P-47. But we're going to continue moving forward. The tanks are going to swing around. We are going to hose the mess out of that infantry in the buildings. There's actually a lot more in there than I initially realized. Again, these are some of my first real experiences with U.S. infantry. And there's just so many of them. They're so durable. I mean, they're like roaches. Get out of my town. But nonetheless, I've got a King Tiger, and it's a separate and special kind of scary as he begins using that impressive main gun to just start rooting out the infantry. And what isn't being done by that, the Panzer III's got a pretty nice gun on it too. We move the infantry out into the open. We're going to pay dividends against the 57mm out there that was just bouncing shots off the Panzer III's. He really could not make a save to stand his a shot to save his life. At this point, I think I took 2 stands. There was a observer for the mortars that had died, and I think I lost a Panzerschreck team to small arms fire. Nonetheless, the tanks begin installing all kinds of high-velocity screen doors into the buildings, while the infantry move forward and just wipe the guns off the board. He would lament later on that they deserve to be shot. Every one of those anti-tank guns deserved to be shot. They had enough gun firepower coming down range that they could have potentially stopped the assaults, but no, he wanted them all to die. They go in, they swing, they kill the main guns. He offers to, it follows in. It's like, can you kill the command team? Yeah, let's swing them in. Should you? No, you should never let the command team move in to swing, but he figured they deserved to die. It was just their lot in life. I continue the assault, swinging into a building nearby because everybody was close enough for the action to occur. Clear out the building and begin moving back into the German streets that we should have otherwise owned. Now, things for the Americans are actually kind of desperate. He begins moving the other infantry on the southern end of the board to try to contest or push towards the objective that the Panzer Grenadiers are protecting. It's just outside a camera shot on the bottom left. While the infantry on the northern end are actually just making a mess of things, backed up by tanks. I'm just walking in there. The 15-centimeter artillery has just made a mess of the American artillery. There's virtually nothing of it left. It's just a systematic destruction. And now they've turned their attention to start uprooting some of the infantry in the buildings. I move all the infantry in a 2-stage assault. We got one assault going on some of the northern buildings as we're going from house to house fighting. And on the other side, backed up by tanks, we got another platoon of infantry that are moving in to take on the other survivors mortars in the couple of buildings over there that have been pushed forward and backward out because I'm just not willing to risk the tank going into the building. And it gets increasingly ugly as we start going in for the assault. The 15-centimeter artillery finds the sweet spot between the platoon that he thought was probably protected, manages to pin the U.S. platoon, and kill quite a few stands. We lay some smoke down on the buildings on the northern end because we're going to prep that for an assault. Hose the ever-living hell out of it with all the machine gun dice we can find. Pin down the entire gaggle. Everybody that's inside the buildings up there. There's a lot of them. They're just roaches. And we move the infantry in for the assault. I try to go for some shenanigans because there's only a couple windows. He can't shoot through all of them, but I realize that he's dug in. He can actually shoot anywhere he wants. But nonetheless, the infantry move in, swing, and wreck the American day. They take the building, push everyone out, and push the stands just to a couple handful of stands holding onto the objective and a couple holding onto the buildings on the northern end. Meanwhile, on the other end, those infantry follow in with their assault, pushing in, killing everybody in that building, and then moving into the next building across the street. They push so far forward that he no longer can hold on to any of the buildings. The American infantry are literally routing out into the field, running for their lives. Victory! Victory is within our grasp. The objective is right there. We're right on top of it. Thus begins the American turn. They decide to go ahead and follow in with their desperation to assault the objective on the southern end, but they've got like an attached heavy machine gun. They're all MG teams. They're all vet, gone to ground, all that schnaz. And they don't even pin them before they go in, and they are absolutely ruined trying to assault the objective. At the end of the round, it is very clear what is about to happen. We've got a full platoon of Panzer IIIs getting ready to take the objective. A King Tiger ready to take the objective. 2 full platoons of SS infantry ready to take the objective. And the only thing that is keeping it from happening is a command team and 2 bazookas. He passes motivation to hold on to it, but it's very, very clear what is about to happen. The TO comes by, tells us that the game is about to end. We take a look at the clock, and there's just no way I'm going to be able to get my turn done and his turn done. And to be quite frank, for the past couple turns, it's been just clubbing a seal. It wasn't even a game. He couldn't make a single die roll. So I went ahead and did what any sane and good player should probably do and just let the game go. Because that game's a game. It's called on time. And so it ended up being a 3-1 for the Germans. There really just isn't any honor in it. I just did not see the point. It was... I mean, I was just walking away with it. It was pretty clear who was going to win. But in retrospect, it turned out that the standings were actually a lot closer than I thought. I was actually really strongly contending for best Axis General. But, you know, I'm not going to do that on just to screw with somebody for another turn. It was painful for the Americans at that point. I mean, that infantry assault, it's just done out of desperation. But despite all that, I have to rue. I had a 6-1 in my grasp, and I let it go. If anything, I'd like to think I'm a good sport. Well, that's been an Ouchies Batrep, and thanks for watching. It really was the only things I lost, just 2 stands. And he lost nearly his entire force. He was packing early. It was that bad.